Welcome back to another explainer. So, have you ever stopped and considered the true, hidden cost of scaling up a business? Today, we're unpacking a seriously profound thematic irony from one of the most gripping narratives out there. We're looking at how ultimate business success can, paradoxically, lead straight to devastating personal failure. By tracking the journey of Walt, Jesse, and Saul, we're going to see how expanding an enterprise, well, it isn't just about managing supply and demand. No, it's deeply, deeply tied to the soul and the moral compromises of the operators themselves. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. There's a fundamental truth that applies just as much to Fortune 500 companies as it does to, say, illicit underground empires. Every major business expansion comes with a cost, but some costs can never be recouped. When we talk about scaling up in the traditional sense, we're usually talking about sacrificing capital, allocating resources, burning through time. But in this story, the currency is a whole lot darker. We are transitioning from everyday textbook business principles to a harsh, unforgiving reality, one where the entrepreneur literally pays for expansion with pieces of their own life. So, to really understand how this all begins, we gotta look at the root problem. Now, every business starts with a product, and Walt and Jesse, they had a highly coveted one. But they hit a classic, critical operational bottleneck, a major distribution struggle. They have a finished product, but absolutely zero network to move it to consumers. Think of it like a brilliant tech startup that just built a revolutionary app, but they have absolutely no marketing or sales reach. Walt and Jesse are sitting on a literal goldmine of blue sky inventory, but they're completely paralyzed. They just can't move it. They lack the logistical network, the market access, and the safety protocols required to actually get their products safely to the end user. It's your standard supply and demand bottleneck, sure. But because of the, let's say, illicit nature of their trade, it's not like they can just hop online and hire a logistics firm to ship it for them, right? They need a very specific, specialized kind of bridge to cross this gap. Now, what's really interesting here is the emphasis on one particular threshold. When Walt and Jesse hit that distribution wall, they go looking for legal counsel. But what they actually find is a facilitator for the underworld. Enter Saul Goodman. He isn't just a criminal lawyer. He is a criminal lawyer. Saul brings this sleazy, fast-paced, high-stakes energy right into the equation. And he represents a massive boundary that they have to cross. By aligning with a lawyer who operates completely outside the bounds of traditional ethics, Walt and Jesse aren't just solving a simple business problem anymore. Actually, scratch that. They're actively, deliberately choosing to plunge way deeper into the criminal abyss just to hit their expansion goals. To really grasp how this expansion works structurally, let's break down this three-step hierarchy of escalation. Step 1, we have Walt and Jesse, the manufacturers, holding the raw product. They're right at the base. Step 2, Saul Goodman enters the chat, acting as the catalyst. Notice he doesn't actually buy or sell the product himself, right? His sole value is providing that absolutely crucial network linkage, which leads us to step 3, Gustavo Fring, the distributor. Saul leverages his shadowy connections to bridge the massive gap between street-level manufacturers and a corporate-level kingpin. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact logistical flow of how an operation graduates from a messy local endeavor to a highly streamlined regional empire. Saul is the necessary chemical reaction, the catalyst, that makes this whole shebang possible. And that brings us to the absolute apex of this hierarchy, Gustavo Fring. When Saul introduces Walt to Gus, the stakes are permanently altered. This isn't just finding a new, slightly bigger buyer. No way. This is landing the ultimate high-level connection. This is the equivalent of a garage startup suddenly securing an exclusive billion-dollar distribution deal with a massive multinational retailer. Except, this multinational retailer happens to operate out of a fast food chicken franchise, Los Pollos Hermanos. The momentum here is absolutely thrilling. Gus represents unlimited resources, cold and calculated professionalism, and the complete, total erasure of Walt and Jesse's initial distribution struggle. The massive business expansion they dreamed of is suddenly right in front of them, just waiting to be seized. It is the absolute peak of their professional ambition. Let's move along and see how this builds, because tracing this escalation reveals a breathtaking pace. Just tracking the timeline paints a really dizzying picture. At minute 0, the characters are stuck in the mud, completely bogged down by their distribution struggle. Just a few minutes later, at minute 4 and 21 seconds, the pivotal meeting with Saul Goodman takes place. The catalyst is officially engaged. And by minute 5 and 57 seconds, we hit both the massive climax of the business deal and the crashing reality of a horrific personal tragedy. It is a breakneck descent. In less than 6 minutes of narrative time, we go from a stalled, frustrated business to the absolute pinnacle of illicit success, instantly colliding with a devastating personal reality.
Let's take a breath here and just consider this stark dichotomy. On one side, Walt successfully delivers a massive batch of product to Gus. He secures the deal, he secures the money, he definitively wins the business game. But look at the other side. He misses the birth of his daughter Holly in the process. The sheer irony is heartbreaking and, honestly, incredibly somber. The very moment he achieves the ultimate professional expansion he's been so desperately chasing, he is completely, utterly absent for the most significant personal expansion of his own family. He crosses the finish line of his business, but he completely loses the family game he always claimed to be playing for in the first place.
So, the crucial point is, how do we actually measure this success? Let's look at the ultimate balance sheet. On the professional side of the ledger, we have the professional expansion, successfully delivering that huge batch to a high-level distributor, cementing his value to a literal empire. But on the personal side, we have the personal cost, missing the birth of his daughter. When you weigh them against each other, the ledger absolutely does not balance. It reveals a dark, catastrophic bargain. Walt traded a foundational, irreplaceable human milestone for a business transaction. Weighing it out forces us to realize that in this particular world, professional scaling requires a direct, permanent, and devastating personal sacrifice. Which brings us to the core dilemma at the heart of this entire journey. When business demands absolutely everything, what is left for the family? The entire justification for this descent into the criminal underworld was, supposedly, to provide for loved ones. But as the expansion accelerated, the business ruthlessly consumed the very time, presence, and morality that made those family connections meaningful to begin with. The ultimate cost of this expansion wasn't just risk, it was everything that actually mattered. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep asking the hard questions, and I'll catch you next time.